You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 418, Decision Making Part 2, Stop Delaying, Start Deciding. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. Before we jump in today, if you have not already listened to part 1 of this series yet, I want to encourage you to go back and start there. That's going to be episode 417, and it lays the foundation for everything we're going to cover today. And if you've already listened to part 1, welcome back. Today we're moving from awareness to action. And in this episode, I'm sharing specific tools to break through fear-based delays, thinking traps, calibration problems, and avoidance patterns, including a framework that I created called the Balanced Decision-Making Matrix. Before we dive in, I want to make sure that you know how to get this free resource that goes along with this episode. As I said, I created the Balanced Decision-Making Matrix that you can download, and it's a complete framework with decision timeframes for each quadrant, real business examples, and power sheets to help you apply it immediately. So you can grab that for free right now by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/decision-making. Again, that's amberdelagarza.com/decision-making. And now, let's get to the straight talk. When you listened to part 1 of this series, you did something really important. You identified your pattern. Maybe it's fear, that what if I get it wrong, voice that keeps you frozen. Or maybe it's a thinking trap, that endless research loop that feels productive, but is never ending in a decision. Maybe it's a calibration problem, spending your best energy on decisions that don't deserve it and showing up depleted for the ones that do. Or maybe it's avoidance, staying in limbo because you never decide, because then you can never be wrong. You might have seen yourself in one category very clearly, but it's also likely that you may have recognized yourself in more than one. Either way, you now have names for what has been happening. That was part 1, awareness. This is part 2, and we're not just talking about it anymore. Today, I'm giving you the tools, specific, practical tools organized around each of those 4 patterns. So, wherever you're stuck, you'll know exactly what to reach for in your toolbox. We're going to move through all 4 categories, and by the end of this episode, you'll have a toolkit you can start using immediately for all your decision making. Let's start with fear-based delays, the what if I get it wrong category. If that's your pattern, I want you to know something. More time, more research, and more opinions won't fix it. Fear doesn't respond to information. It responds to interruption. So let's interrupt it. Here are 4 tools to do exactly that. The first one is called evidence inventory, aka positive proof. A close friend introduced me to this one many, many years ago, and I have been using it for myself and clients ever since. When you are stuck in a fear spiral, your brain is feeding you a very one-sided story. And that one-sided story is going to feel very, very real to you. It might be saying things like, I'm going to get this wrong. I'm not qualified to make this decision. This could blow everything up that I've built already. And your brain presents that story as an absolute fact. with complete confidence. No caveats, no counter arguments allowed, just as if it is absolutely 100% true. So, this tool is simple. I want you to look for positive proof of the opposite. Ask yourself, where have I already proven this fear wrong? Think about the hard decisions you've made before that worked out, the difficult conversations you were terrified to have that didn't end in a disaster, the times you started without all the answers and figured it out along the way. You've done all of that and so much more, probably more times than you're giving yourself credit for right now. Because the truth is, you've been making decisions for your business 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or maybe even more. And not one of them has broken it yet. Let that sink in. You are still in business, and you have been making decisions all along the way. Let's just say your brain is telling you, I'm not qualified to make this call. The counter isn't generic confidence, it's specific proof. So write it down. When have you made a call you weren't sure about and it worked out? When have you figured something out that you'd never done before? And when have you navigated something harder than this? Those are great questions to prompt yourself to find positive proof. Those answers to those questions are your evidence. And it's already there. Your brain has just stopped showing it to you. So ask these questions to pull it forward. This isn't always the easiest to do, and I'll be honest with you, because you're so close to it. You're emotional and you're not exactly unbiased in these moments oftentimes. So another way to do this is to ask a trusted peer, a mentor, or a coach who has watched you build your business, build your life. Ask them. Because someone on the outside can often see your positive proof more clearly than you can. This is a very powerful thing that can happen in a coaching relationship. It's not just about moving forward, but reflecting back on the proof of who you already are and what you've already handled, especially when you can no longer see it for yourself. I do this all the time with clients. They may be in a spiral, they might be in indecision, they might not be sure of the way forward or that they can figure it out. And I often slow down and mirror back to them positive proof. And the response is always like, yeah, you're right. Or, oh, I forgot about that. Or, oh my gosh, that feels really true to me. Any variation of that and many more. But my job as a coach is to hold that space and understand the context and the background and the history and bring those to surface so that my clients can move through making their own decisions well. The second tool is the audience audit, combined with what I call the their opinion, my business reframe. These two work as one move. And when fear of judgment is what's keeping you stuck, this is where I want you to start. The first step is to get specific. Ask yourself, who am I actually afraid of that will judge you for this decision? Not vague, not a nameless crowd, not a general audience of people, an actual person. Name them. Go ahead. Who's on that list? Business owners who do this exercise tend to discover two things. First, the list is much shorter than what it felt like when it was just a vague idea in their head. Your brain had you performing for an entire audience that didn't actually exist. 2, and this is the important one, not a single person on that list is responsible for your outcomes. They don't carry your payroll. They don't lie awake at night worrying about your business. They don't have to live with the consequences of your decision. You do. So here's the reframe. Their opinion, your business. Their opinion is theirs to have, and your business is yours to run. Once you see it that way, does it change how much weight you're giving their imaginary reaction? Say you're thinking about dropping a service that is draining you. You're afraid a peer in your industry will think you couldn't make it work. But that peer isn't on your payroll. They don't know your numbers. They don't know your clients. Their opinion costs them nothing, and it shouldn't cost you your decision. The third tool is the 5 years from now test. This one is fast, and it's one of my favorites for cutting judgment fear down to the right size. When the fear of what people will think feels so overwhelming, ask yourself, in 5 years, will anyone remember or care about this decision? And honestly, you can even say in 1 year, will anyone remember or care about this decision? Think about a decision you made just 2 years ago that felt risky at the time. Maybe it was raising your rates, or letting a client go, or changing your business model. And I have to ask, are your peers actually still talking about it? Is anyone still judging you for it? The answer is almost certainly not. In fact, my guess is you can barely remember that decision, which should really put this into perspective for you, that if in 2 short years you can't even remember that this was such a quote unquote big decision for you to make, then this one question will help you start right-sizing the decision. Because life moved on, business moved forward. The judgment that you're dreading right now has an expiration date, and it's much sooner than your brain is trying to tell you. And if the answer is yes to this question of in 5 years, will anyone remember or care about this decision? Then the decision deserves your full and deliberate attention. Not paralyzed avoidance, but real focused thinking. Either way, you now know exactly what to do with it. The fourth tool is the worst case exercise. It's been around since the Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. This practice of facing the worst case directly instead of letting it live as a vague, terrifying cloud in the back of your mind. And Tim Ferriss brought this into the modern business world as what he calls fear setting. And it's worth looking it up if you want to go deeper. For today's episode, the question that you would ask yourself in this situation, if you use this tool, is what is the actual worst case if the decision goes wrong? Not the vague, everything can fall apart. Get specific. What would actually happen? I want you to go into every detail. I want you to do a mind dump of every detail of what could go wrong that your brain is telling you. Then I want you to ask yourself, can you survive it? Can you recover if everything went wrong? But something else that happens when you force yourself to stay out of the vagueness and get more specific is that you can actually uncover what is the fear that's holding you back. And in some cases, there's truth to that fear. And what I mean by this is that your brain is saying, caution, caution. And instead of just overriding it and saying, yep, nothing to look here, that I find is not the best method to move forward. But can you make a list and then objectively look at it? And some of the things you will not do anything about. You're just like, you know what? It's possible it can happen. I know I can survive it. I can recover. It's not going to break the business. But there might be some things on this list that you're like, yes, that is a real reason I'm not moving forward in this decision, and I can fix that. Or you can create a solution that minimizes that risk. Sometimes that whisper is actually telling the truth. And for you, it's really important that you can discern the difference. But overarching, this exercise allows us to get very, very specific and either move into action or realize that our brain was just making this a big deal and it really isn't. And you know that you could move forward with any of the outcomes that are possible. And here's what I know after working almost 15 years with my clients. It is rarely the decision itself that has you paralyzed. It's the unexamined fear sitting behind it. Your brain has been treating an unlikely worst case as certainty. And when you actually look at it directly and you name it and you get specific about it, it almost never holds up the way it felt like it would. So name it, get specific, ask, can you survive it? Is there truth? And do you actually need to take action on something to minimize the risks? That might be something that shows up in this very specific list. But most of the time, you know you can move through the decision. And you're letting this vague story that's taking a hold in your brain to keep you stuck and afraid. So I want to play this out in a very specific example. Let's say you're afraid of letting go of a client. You know, that client that is reaching out to you at all times of the day, night and weekend. You guys have very mismatched expectations of the services you provide and what they're expecting. Or maybe they're just a bit verbally abusive and aggressive to you or your team members. All right, you got that client in your head? All right, so worst case, you let them go. They leave angry and they tell people. They are going to tell all their friends. They are going to leave you a bad review. I want you to ask yourself, can you survive that? Yes, absolutely. Can you recover from it? Yes. And in this specific situation, because this isn't just one that's made up, this often comes across inside our coaching conversations, is that if this client is showing up in this way to you and in this situation, chances are that person is showing up very similar in many other situations. So even if they told everybody, don't you think that the people that are hearing them complain are listening to it through a grain of salt because they understand who they are and how they interact with people? Again, reframing and getting real about what would be the worst case scenario. Most of the time, the actual worst case is not even that likely, but if it was, it's definitely survivable. If it's unnamed, it's unexamined. And that version is keeping you stuck. Now, let's talk about thinking traps. I just need a little more information category. Analysis paralysis, the moving goalpost, perfectionism, the comparison spiral, the just one more loop. Here's the hard truth about this pattern. You're not stuck because you don't have enough information. You're stuck because you've convinced yourself that more information will eventually make the decision feel safe. It won't. At some point, more research stops being preparation and starts being avoidance with extra steps. Let's break that loop. The first tool is that done is more profitable than perfect. And this reframe comes from an old dear friend of mine, Darren LaCroix, who shared it with me more than a decade ago. Perfectionism isn't a high standard. It's a delay strategy dressed up as one. And for business owners, that delay has a direct cost because a decision made is information gained. And perfection that never arrives, it's nothing. Done is more profitable than perfect. When you're stuck waiting for the perfect solution, the perfect timing, the perfect hire, the perfect strategy, ask yourself, what is this wait actually costing your business right now? Is it revenue not captured, momentum not built, opportunities not taken? Perfectionism feels responsible, but it's often just expensive. The goal isn't a perfect decision. The goal is the best decision you can make right now, made in time to matter. Say you've been working on a new service offering for months, but you keep tweaking it over and over and over again before putting it out there. The truth is, you don't actually know what the market wants until you test it. Every day you wait for the quote unquote perfect is a day you're delaying the feedback that would actually tell you what needs to get fixed. Done gets you feedback, and striving for perfectionism keeps you guessing. The second tool is the what would it take question. And this one is for the moving the goalpost. That pattern where the finish line keeps moving every time you get close to it. I'll decide when I have X, then X comes and suddenly you need Y. Then Y comes and now it's Z. You keep moving it further and further down the field. The loop never ends because the goal was never really information. It was certainty. And certainty doesn't come before a decision. Here's the question that stops this loop cold in its tracks. What information would actually change your decision? I'm going to repeat that again. What information would actually change your decision? Not what would make you feel better, not what would give you more confidence. What would actually genuinely change the direction you're already leaning? Say you've been going back and forth on whether to let a team member go. You've been gathering more information for weeks, watching more closely, asking other people's opinions, giving it more and more time. But if you ask yourself honestly, what information would actually change what you already know, like you truly know? The answer is probably nothing. You already know, and you've probably known for a while. The research isn't for the decision. The research is for the delay. If you sit with that question honestly and the answer is nothing, then you already know what to decide. You're not still gathering information, you're hiding behind it. This third tool is the decision deadline. And this one is a rescue tool. It's for when you're deep in the spiral, buried in the research loop, and you need a way out. Set a deadline. Pick a specific date and commit to deciding by then, with whatever information you have at that point. Not a soft target, not a moving target, a hard stop. Here's why this works so well. Your brain will never feel like it has enough. It wants more and more time, more and more information. Left to its own devices, it will always find one more article to read, one more person to ask, and one more scenario to consider. The decision deadline takes that option off the table entirely. And this is simpler than it sounds. Is there a decision that you have been sitting on that could use a hard stop right now? I want you to pick a date, put it on the calendar, and honor it the way you'd honor a meeting with your most important clients. Give yourself until Friday to decide on that software switch that you have been researching for 3 months. Friday comes, you decide with what you have. No extensions. That hard stop is what forces your brain to actually work with the information in front of it instead of searching for more. Now, another layer to this is that if you are a really good self-negotiator and you do not hit internal deadlines, is to ask somebody to hold you accountable to that date. A great person to ask is your coach, your business coach, or a colleague, a peer, a significant other. Make it have an external accountability element so that that date that you chose doesn't just come and go, but really you're holding your feet to the fire so that you can move through that decision. The fourth tool is My Business, My Vision of Success. And this one is for the comparison spiral. The pattern where you keep looking outward to figure out what you should do instead of looking inward at what actually makes sense for your business. What are other business owners doing, you might ask? Or what is the industry standard? Or what did that person recommend on that podcast? And before you know it, you keep asking those questions and you've completely lost the thread of what you actually want for your business. So here's what I do when my clients are in a comparison spiral. I bring them back with two questions. One, what does success look like for your business? Not someone else's business, not the industry benchmark, yours specifically. Two, who or what are you actually comparing yourself to? Are you even in the same situation? Meaning, if you are going down this comparison spiral and you are comparing yourself to another business owner that has many, many more years of business experience, maybe they're at a different revenue stage, they have a different team size, their clientele is different, their goals are different. So most of the time, their situation doesn't match yours. And let's be honest, when you're scrolling Instagram, it's so easy to forget all of that and you just keep comparing yourself. And I have never met anyone that is in this comparison spiral that feels good. It doesn't feel good. It is not going to help you move into decision. It's not going to help you show up your best. It's not going to help you with your mindset. But the moment that you can reconnect with your own definition of success, the comparison loses its grip. And if you would like some strategies around creating your own vision of success, I would recommend going back to episode 398, the one question that changes everything in your business and life. And in that episode, I walk you through how to identify and create your own vision of success. And it has an opt-in that has journaling questions that will get you there and really help you nail that down. Next, the fifth tool is the input limit rule. This one pairs naturally with My Business, My Vision of Success, and it addresses the other side of the comparison spiral. The tendency to keep collecting outside opinions until someone finally tells you what you want to hear. Come on, have you ever done that? You're like, yes, thanks, next opinion. Yep, thanks, next opinion. If you are someone who collects outside opinions before making a decision, I want you to do two things. First, limit the number of outside perspectives you seek. This includes the number of podcast episodes you listen to on any given topic. 2 to 3 people maximum. After that, you're not gathering wisdom anymore, you're creating noise. And then second, and this is the one that often gets skipped, be intentional about who those people are. Not everyone's opinion deserves equal weight. The person you're asking should have relevant experience, understand your business and your goals, and have a track record you actually respect. A peer who has never navigated what you're navigating is not the same as a mentor that has. A friend who gives you the answer you want to hear is not the same as a trusted advisor who gives you the answer you need to hear. So limit the input. Raise the standard of who provides it to you. All right, so those 5 tools that I just shared with you will help get you out of the thinking trap. But there's a third pattern that runs underneath all of them, and it's the one that goes the most unnoticed. Remember in part 1 when I said that your brain lies to you? Nowhere is that more true than with the calibration problems. This is the one that I see often. Calibration is about matching your energy and attention to what a decision actually deserves. And if you've ever wondered why you're exhausted before you ever get to the decision that matters, this is likely why. You spend 2 hours comparing software options that cost $30 a month, then you show up mentally exhausted for the decision that could impact your business for the next 2 years. You burn your mental energy on the small stuff and have nothing left for the decisions that actually matter. Research on decision fatigue has consistently shown that the quality of your decisions deteriorates the more decisions you make. Your brain has been lying to you, telling you that every decision deserves the same scrutiny, the same energy, the same level of agonizing over it. And that is simply not true. To fix your calibration, you need to understand 2 things. 1, reversibility, and 2, stakes. And once you can see those clearly, everything else follows. So let's dive into reversibility. Back in part 1, I mentioned that many decisions are more reversible than you think. That was not a throwaway line. It was a setup for what I want to teach you here right now. It's one of the most important shifts that you can make in how you approach decisions. Your brain defaults to treating decisions as permanent. And I say your brain, I should say our brain. Nobody is immune to this one. Our brains default to treating decisions as permanent. Our brains might think things like, what if I can't undo this? What if I'm locked in? And if your brain is like my brain, that's not even the chatter that I can hear. It's just an assumption that is so ingrained that you almost can't even see that that's the assumption or the filter in which you are making decisions through, is that you think that every decision is permanent. But here's the truth. Most decisions, far more than you realize, can be adjusted, reconsidered, or reversed if they don't work out. This reversibility is something that my own business coach taught me over a decade ago. He explained it to me this way. He said, you are making every single decision as if you cannot undo it. I want you to think of it as like a door that you can walk through, and you don't know what's on the other side of the door until you walk through it. But if you walk through it, you definitely have a choice to walk back out of it. And once he gave me that kind of visual analogy, I think of it every time I make a decision. Is this one of those decisions that I can walk through the door and choose to walk back out of? Is it reversible? I want you to think of this for things like if you're switching a software, is it reversible? Yes. If you make a new service offering, is it reversible? Yes. If you delete a service offering, is it reversible? Yes, you can bring it back. Even a hire is reversible. Most of our decisions are far more flexible than our brain is telling us they are. And when a decision feels too big, too permanent, and too final, I want you to consider deciding it temporarily. Not forever, just for now. Try it on, see how it fits and how it feels. What it reveals that you simply couldn't have known from the other side. I did this when I was I've done this many times, but 2 that you probably know about here on the podcast are, number 1 was Leverage Lab. I decided to close Leverage Lab. And at first, I truly did it temporarily. And I had known that I was going to probably make it permanent, but I wasn't sure. But what I did know is that while I wasn't ready to make the close permanent, I did know that I could move through that decision more quickly to think about it temporarily. So at first, we were going to temporarily hit pause on it for 6 months. And if I decided I was going to bring it back, I was going to do a complete overhaul on the marketing, the messaging, the content, and everything inside of it. But ultimately, that temporary decision was so clear to me that it was going to be a permanent decision. I felt lighter. I felt like it was the correct path forward for my business. The other way in which I have done this is the podcast name. For those of you that have been around for a while, you know that the podcast used to be called Productivity Straight Talk. And it was that up until about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. And let me tell you, this was a huge decision. And now I can't even tell you when I made the decision. But the podcast was Productivity Straight Talk since 2017. That's a long time. And I knew that I wanted to pivot in the content of the podcast, in how I was branding myself and my services. And so I just decided I was going to walk through that door. And if I walked through that door and I tanked the podcast and I totally broke everything in my business, so that I could walk it back and rename it Productivity Straight Talk. And as soon as I gave myself that permission, I was able to move through that decision more confidently, more quickly, and knowing that gave me ultimately peace. Well, here we are in March of 2026, and I am not changing the name. I am not walking that decision back. And had I not been able to think of it as a temporary decision or a decision that was reversible, I may still have been stuck in all the things that I've been sharing in this series about breaking my business, doing the wrong thing, so many unknowns on the other side. And the truth is that we never really know until we walk through the door. Those are just two examples. I actually use this for myself all of the time. So taking the pressure of permanence off a decision doesn't make it less serious. It makes it more accessible. And for me, once I unlocked this, that has been really business changing, and I don't say that lightly, I use this all the time, and I want you to as well. So before you agonize over any decision, ask yourself, is this actually permanent? Or is this just my brain telling me it is? The second piece of the calibration equation is the stakes. Stakes is simpler than it sounds. I want you to simply ask yourself, how much does this decision actually matter? Not how it feels, because sometimes it can feel really, really big. And this is one of those times that we want to not lean on our emotions, but more on our logic. So how much does this decision actually matter? How much does it actually matter to your business, to your clients, your revenue, and your team? A $30 software decision is low stakes. A $20,000 marketing investment is high stakes. Choosing a new email template, low stakes. Restructuring your pricing model, high stakes. It's not that you can't tell the difference when you think about it clearly. The problem is that when you're under stress and you're not thinking about it all together, you're reacting to how the decision feels rather than what it actually is. And under stress, everything feels high stakes. This is your brain lying to you again. And again, I'm going to be completely transparent. This is one of those landmines that I walk myself in quite frequently. And this isn't a tool I was expecting to share with you, but I will tell you that I have given my team, specifically Crystal, permission to let me know that it's good enough. I personally can obsess over an email template. Like, that is my natural mode. And I catch myself, but I've also given my team permission to tap me on the shoulder, make a comment, and just pull me out of that loop of like, it's just an email template. So much so that now, this far into my business, I often will be like, oh, done. It's just an email template. Nope, move on. I don't care. I have to verbalize it and declare that this is not a major decision. The stakes are not that high so that I can walk away from it. So again, my natural tendency is not the most productive thing. And I get into it and I get emotional and I have an opinion about sometimes the minor details, as I'm sure you do in your business. But as a business owner, we have to zoom back out and remind ourselves what is truly worth our energy, time, and attention, and what are the stakes for the decision that we're actually looking to make. Once you can see any decision through both reversibility and clearly identifying what's at stake, you're ready for the framework that I'm going to share with you next that I've created and put together for you. So, putting those two things together, and you get the balanced decision-making matrix. This is a framework that I created specifically to help you, the business owner, to sort through your decisions quickly. It's a framework to restructure the way that you think about approaching decision-making so that you can help train yourself to acknowledge and understand where you're falling, into traps with and how to get yourself out. So you can stop over-investing in the decisions that don't deserve it and start giving the right attention to the ones that do. Because decision fatigue is real. You know it's real. I always like to say, if you have ended your day and you've been at work all day and you've made literally 50, 100 decisions, maybe even more than that, and then you walk through the door and a family member is like, and what's for dinner? And you literally short circuit, you can't even think about what you're going to eat for dinner, that actually the idea of not eating sounds better in that moment than having to make one more decision. I see you, I understand. And that is because decision fatigue is a very real thing. Well, if that's how we feel about feeding ourselves and our family, we do not want that same energy when we have to make some irreversible, high stakes decisions and decisions that are really going to impact our business. So I've put together a free PDF that goes deep, deep into this framework, and the complete framework on how to, make decisions, what those timeframes are, real business examples, and then a power sheet that you can actually apply these frameworks immediately in your business. And I'm going to show you how to grab that in just a few minutes after I walk you through the framework itself. Now, the framework is 2 axes: stakes and reversibility. Every decision you face lives somewhere on these 2 axes. And where it lands tells you exactly how much time and energy it deserves. This gives you 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is quick wins. They're low stakes, they're reversible, you can decide now and adjust later. The next is careful steps. It's low stakes, but a bit more permanent in the decision. Give it brief consideration, commit, and then move on. The next quadrant is strategic bets. These are high stakes, but reversible. And this deserves thoughtful attention, but definitely not stressing and agonizing over it. And then the last quadrant is major moves, high stakes and permanent. And this deserves your full, deliberate attention. I want you to get input. I want you to take the time you need to make these decisions. Now, again, inside this framework and power sheets, I give you so many examples of what types of business decisions fall into each of these quadrants. The point of using this tool is to match your effort to what the decision actually deserves. Sometimes we think of preserving our time, right? Time management. And we think of, maybe one layer to that is preserving our energy management. Well, another resource that is very limited that we want to preserve is our decision-making abilities. And so if we can use the tools that I'm sharing in this series, you can use this specific framework that I'm sharing with you in this balanced decision-making matrix, you are able to preserve your energy and attention to these very important decisions so they don't keep getting kicked down the road and then your business stalls. So while I have briefly reviewed the balanced leadership matrix here in this episode, I do want you to get your hands on it completely free. So you can download that by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/decision making. Again, that's amberdelagarza.com/decision making. And finally, avoidance patterns. If I don't decide, I can't fail category. Does this sound familiar? Or perhaps it's fear of ownership, passive decision making, the sunk cost trap, and the comfort of limbo. Before we get into the tools, I want to say something directly about this pattern. Not deciding is a decision. Every day that you stay in limbo, you are actively choosing to stay there. And the business consequences of that choice is just as real as if you had made the wrong call. Maybe, sometimes even more. Because at least a wrong decision will give you information, new information that you didn't already have access to. Staying stuck gives you nothing. And if that landed somewhere for you, good. I want you to hold on to it because these next 4 tools that we're going to get into will make you more actionable. The first is the ownership shift. This one is for fear of ownership. The pattern where you keep delaying because you don't want to be the one to make the call if it goes wrong. You're thinking, if it goes wrong, I don't want it to be on me. And you might be actively, consciously thinking that, or even subconsciously thinking that. You own the outcome either way. I'm going to lovingly say that again. Whether you make a decision or not, you own the outcome either way. If you decide and it goes wrong, that's on you. And if you don't decide and things fall apart, that's also on you. If you wait for someone else to decide and they make the wrong call, you chose to let them decide. So that's still on you. There's no vision of this where you get to be the bystander in your own business. So the ownership shift is simply this. Stop trying to avoid owning the outcomes and start owning the process. You do not have to guarantee the results. You just have to make the most informed, thoughtful decision you can with what you have right now. I'm going to say that again because that's all anyone is ever doing when we move into a decision. We're making the best decision we can with the information we have at that time. That's it. That's your job as a business owner. So are you waiting for a decision to feel risk-free before you own it, before you make that call? Are you trying to be risk adverse? It will never feel risk-free. Own the process instead. The second tool is the would I start this today test? And this is for the sunk cost trap. Behavioral economist Hal Arks and Catherine Bloomer named this pattern back in 1985. The tendency to keep going on something simply because of how much you've already put into it. You may have put in time, money, energy, your reputation. And the more you've invested, the harder it feels to stop, even when the evidence says you should. The sunk cost fallacy says, I've already put so much into it. I can't stop now. But here's the problem with that thinking. Past investment is not a reason to keep going. It's just a reason you feel like you should keep going. The money you've already spent, it's gone. The time that you've already invested, gone. The energy, gone. None of it comes back whether you keep going or you stop. So here's the test. If I weren't already invested in this, If I was starting fresh today, would I choose to begin this? That's it. If you were starting fresh today and with the information you have today and not when you initially made that decision, would you choose it again? For example, would you hire this person again knowing what you know now? Would you start this project today? Would you sign up for this commitment that you may have made a year ago, 2 years ago? If the honest answer is no, the sunk cost is keeping you stuck, and it's time to make a forward-looking decision instead of a backward-looking one. Say you've been running a service that had made sense 3 years ago, but has become your least profitable, most draining, and high-stress offering. You keep it because you've put years into building it, and clients have been depending on it. But if you strip all that away and ask yourself honestly, if this didn't exist yet, would I build it today? And if the answer is no, the sunk cost is making the decision for you, not logic, not strategy. I'm going to say that again. If the answer of starting it again today with the information you have is no, then the sunk cost is making the decision for you, not logic, not strategy. Just the weight of what you've already spent. Let it go. Feel lighter. Make a different decision. I'm going to say that again. You have permission to make a different decision. This kind of goes hand in hand with reversibility. You may be thinking, I made this decision. My previous self made this decision 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It feels permanent, but you can decide that it's not permanent and you can make a different decision today. The third tool is the cost of inaction analysis. What I also like to call is the limbo tax. This one is for the comfort of limbo and passive decision making. That pattern where staying undecided feels safer than committing either way. This is a very real. Many of us feel safer than making a decision. Now, I said many of us, that is not me. I feel super uncomfortable in indecision. I'm very aware of how unproductive that is, how much momentum is lost, how energy draining it is. But when we build up that fear of making a decision, this limbo feels better to us. But limbo is not neutral. It has a price, and I just shared with you what my price is. The truth is that price never often gets calculated. So let's do it now. Ask yourself, what is staying undecided on this actually costing me? Not what acting might cost, but what waiting is costing you. So this limbo. Is it costing you mental energy? Yes, my hand is up. I am very aware of that. That constant low hum of an unresolved decision taking up space in your head? Is it costing you momentum? The team member waiting on the answer, the opportunity sitting on pause, or the client relationship stuck in uncertainty? Or perhaps it's costing you sleep because you're up at 2 a.m. Your presence at home, do you feel distracted and not very present with your loved ones? Or perhaps it's costing your focus during your workday and you're thinking about the decision, but stuck in inaction. That's the limbo tax, and you're paying it whether you realize it or not. And so my invitation here is to start realizing it. For me, I am hyper aware of it, and that's why it feels so uncomfortable. And I kind of welcome that uncomfortableness and that awareness so that it does drive me to move into action and not sitting in the cost of limbo. So here's the question that makes this completely undeniable. I want you to ask, what am I choosing by not choosing? Are you choosing stress? Are you choosing overwhelm, lack of motivation? What are you choosing by not choosing? You're choosing the mental load. You're choosing the stalled momentum. You're choosing to keep paying the limbo tax. But once you see it that way, is staying in limbo still the safer option? Just me having this conversation with you on this podcast might be enough awareness to now recognize when you're in limbo. And I want you to think about how that feels in your body and your day to day. And are you willing to no longer pay that tax? Next, the fourth tool is the both options are survivable test. Now, there are generally more than two options, but for this one, let's just assume there's two options. The limbo tax shows you what staying undecided is costing you. This tool deals with a different layer of the same problem. The fear that both paths forward feel dangerous or uncertain. So the only safe place is to stay in indecision in the middle. And it comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically Aaron Beck's work on helping people move through catastrophic thinking. In the comfort of limbo, both options feel dangerous. Deciding one way feels scary. Deciding the other way feels scary. So you stay in the middle because at least there, nothing bad is happening yet. Until you make yourself incredibly aware of the limbo tax. And now maybe each of the options don't feel that scary because you want to move yourself away from paying that tax. But here's what that thinking misses completely. The thinking of wanting to stay in limbo is that you've already experienced the consequences. Right now, while you're waiting, you're paying the tax and feeling the consequences. You just might not have been able to put words to it or aware of it. So here's the test. If you have a decision and you feel like you're at a fork in the road, look at both options, whichever two paths are in front of you, and ask, can I survive option A? Can the business survive option A? Can I or the business survive option B? We are not setting standards here of, can I thrive? Am I looking for guarantees? I just want you to ask yourself, worst case scenario, can you survive this decision? Can you recover from it if it doesn't work out? Can you course correct if you need to? And the answer almost always is yes to both. And the moment that you see that both options are survivable, the middle ground stops feeling safe. That illusion of safety and indecision, because you realize it was never safe in the first place. It was in fact robbing you with stress, robbing you with overwhelm, robbing you of opportunities and not moving forward. It just was familiar. The risk isn't in deciding, the risk is staying stuck. So today you came to this episode with probably some awareness around your patterns. And it could be an entire category, or you could feel a mix of the patterns that I shared with you from part 1. But today, my goal for today's episode is that you leave with a toolbox that you can access at any time when you find yourself in these patterns. For fear-based delays, I shared 4 tools to interrupt them. Because fear doesn't respond to more information, it responds to direct examination. For the thinking traps, I shared 5 tools to break the loop. Because the research was never really about the decision, it was about avoiding the discomfort of committing. For calibration problems, I shared 2 concepts and a framework to fix them. The balanced decision-making matrix. Because not every decision deserves the same energy, and your brain has been lying to you about that for a long time. And for the avoidance patterns, I shared 4 tools to move you forward because not deciding is still deciding. And limbo has a price you've been paying, whether you knew it or not. So, if you haven't already done so, I want to remind you to hit pause and go grab the Balanced Decision Making Matrix PDF. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/decision making. It has the complete framework, decision timelines, real business examples so that you can see your business through this framework, and power sheets to help you apply everything that we covered today. And if you have found yourself in more than one category today, I just want to reiterate that is completely normal. It happens more often than you think for many of us. So start with the pattern that is costing you the most right now. One tool, one decision. That's all it takes to break the cycle. And in part 3, we're going to talk about something different. Because sometimes you've done the analysis, you've used the frameworks, and you've worked through the fear, and you're still stuck. That's when we talk about trusting yourself and why so many business owners struggle to do that even when they already know the answer. All right, so your toolbox is full. The only question now is whether you'll use it. I have loved having you listen to this episode of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast, and I sure hope you have found today's episode around decision making to be incredibly valuable. But I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So this week, I want you to identify one decision that you've been sitting on, just one, and figure out which pattern has been keeping you stuck for that specific decision. And answer, is it fear? Is it a thinking trap? Is it a calibration challenge? An avoidance pattern? Then choose the tool that will help you move into decision and make it before the week is out. Stop paying the limbo tax. Create more momentum. Reduce your stress. One decision, one tool at a time. All right, that's it. That's my ask. Because once you see the results of using the tools in your toolbox, I want you to come back and use the tools over and over again when you feel that you are avoiding making a decision. And as a reminder, if you have not already done so, make sure you go grab the Decision Making Matrix Framework and Power Sheets. You can get that by going to amberdelagarza.com/decision making, all one word. And if you have enjoyed today's episode, be sure to not keep it a secret. Do you know a fellow business owner that struggles to move through decision making? Be sure to share this as a resource for them. And if you are new here, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and especially part 3 of this series. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.